Hi, welcome to the Long Beach Post live chats. We're doing these every day at 1 o'clock. We've been doing this now for about 3 weeks. So our intent with these is to provide the public with information from the people who are actually out responding to the coronavirus pandemic. And today, co-moderating with me, my name is Melissa Evans, by the way. I'm the editor here at the Post. Co-moderating with me is Jeremiah Dobruck, who is our breaking news editor. He's been a little busy over the past few weeks. And I'm very happy that our guest today is the fire chief, Chief Espino, who I'm sure is not busy at all.
No, it's been nice and quiet, actually.
Yeah. So before we get started with our discussion, I just want to invite you who are watching to send us your questions. You can type your questions right in the comment feed of the live broadcast, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So with that, we'll get started. I guess just to kick it off, you've been with the Long Beach Fire Department for over 30 years and just became chief about 6 months ago. And I'm sure that you and your career have responded to a lot of different emergencies. And I'm just wondering, for someone, a veteran like yourself, how does this health crisis differ from something like an earthquake or a wildfire or something that we think of more typically as an emergency?
Yeah, well, it's a good point that you bring up, Melissa. And the fact of the matter is that for us, this is the unknown, not really knowing what was coming with this coronavirus. That's a biggie for us because we prepare for just about anything that we're going to come up against. And in fact, our patches say Semper Paratus, which is always prepared. And on this one, there really was no real way to prepare for it. And then the scope of the actual incident, normally, even if we go on a very, very large event, say a wildfire, you're still only talking about a portion of the California coast versus now we're looking at something that's actually global. To your point about my time on the job and being able to be prepared for that, I actually brought this up into our incident management team about a month ago as I was addressing them. And I said, as I was driving into work this morning, I thought about all of the different things I've experienced in my career. And the 92 riots, I was a paramedic riding around with the National Guard out in the street. And that was wild. And I never thought I'd see anything bigger than that, followed by 9/11, which affected the entire country, but still was localized on the East Coast. I mean, it wasn't happening here in California, and then followed by this pandemic for us, which is affecting everyone globally. So the scope of it is actually quite awesome to look at, and just the fact that we weren't, that nobody was really prepared for what was coming. And so new information every day. You change your behaviors and protocols every day based on new behaviors. So, it's different, to say the least.
I would imagine it's different too from a staffing standpoint. I mean, usually and I'm talking about, for us and covering these types of things, usually you have a big event and then there's the fallout.
Right.
And our publisher described as, we're still kind of shaking. If this were an earthquake, we're still almost kind of in the disaster.
Yeah. So for us, actually, the ramp up was huge at the beginning. Unfortunately for us, we live in a world here in California with Master Mutual Aid where we live in base camps and going and setting up large operations in a very, very short period of time. And so at the very beginning of this, like in the first week of March, we had a incident management team stood up here at headquarters. Upwards of 120 people a day were here just getting everything ready for what was coming, what we anticipated coming. They actually built a town, if you will. They've got Main Street out in one of the hangars. There's actually a sign out there that says Main Street. That's what they call them on base camps. And that is home to planning, logistics, operations, finance, everything that we need to run this operation. So we had quite a few extra people here while in headquarters itself, we pretty much went dark. with our civilian staff that were able to stay home, telecommute. We had them stay home so that they were safer. And then following the incident management team being stood up, we actually stood up the EOC with quite a few personnel also. And I need to make this point that it's not all fire department personnel. There's quite a few, but there are people populating the IMT and the EOC from every department in the city, and every department has been valuable as far as contributing to the overall actions. It's been great.
Jeremiah, do you want to?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me just how quickly this has affected everybody so much. And the one thing that kind of popped to mind for me was how, when we're talking about the public, how most members of the public probably interact with the fire department, which is calling 911. And I was wondering if you could walk us through just some of the changes that have been made, how you respond to things, what people might expect that's different. And I guess the first thing on that is what should people expect when they call 911 now? Yeah, so what they're getting now on the front end of it is our dispatch criteria have changed a bit. So now we're screening for signs of actually positive screen, potential COVID. And on those, our personnel wear specialized PPE with N95 masks, goggles, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, we're asking for cell phone numbers of the calling party. And that way the captain, while he's en route, can contact the potential patient and ask them to come outside. It does two things. One, it keeps us from going in the house, from introducing 4 new people or 6 new people into somebody's residence. And also it keeps us safe because we're outside. Now, in the event we can't do that, there's identified at least one person will go in, start the evaluation. And so we've changed a bit in that respect. The other thing, like I said, with the increase in PPE, we do a lot of fire prevention at the schools with all of our equipment on, so that the children get to recognize us with our breathing apparatus and helmets and everything on it, and to see we're not that scary looking. But as you can imagine, for most people, when you have 6 firefighters walking up to your front door and they've got goggles and masks and everything else on, perhaps a bit intimidating. And we're trying to take some of that away just by preparing people. Should people, speaking of being intimidated, should people be worried about answering these questions? Is there any kind of situation where you may not respond to a call, or should people know that if they call 911, they need medical help, you guys are going to be there, even if they screen positive for this, for COVID-19? Yeah, even if they screen positive and basically it's for respiratory type issues, right? So fever, dry cough, those types of things, we're responding. It's just we want to get a better take on what we're responding to, so we can protect the people that are going there on the engines of the rescues. And what happens after one of those calls where a firefighter may have been exposed to COVID-19? Are they quarantined? Is there a testing process? What actually happens if a firefighter is afraid they have the coronavirus? Yeah, so we have a very strict protocol on what we do, and that actually goes from that firefighter to his supervisor. In the event there's a potential exposure, the supervisor gets a hold of the battalion chief, who contacts our EMS liaison. The EMS liaison will take a look at all of the factors, determine, okay, this is a big or a great exposure or not, and then that will go to the medical director. And then from that point, they may decide to test or not to test. The protocol that we've switched to on the fire department specifically is in the event there's an exposure and we think everything is good, there's no testing. But in the event you have signs and symptoms, if you're sick, it's don't come to work, report by the phone, and then we'll have you come in for testing, and we'll go from that route. So it sounds like firefighters are in basically the same situation as the public, where you're probably not going to be tested unless you're showing symptoms for this. That's correct. Okay. Yeah. How many? Am I right? The number of firefighters who've tested positive is 16, and they've all recovered. That's correct. They're all back to work. Yeah, and it's been 21 days, I believe, since our last positive screening. what was that like going through that process? It sounded like most of those cases were pretty mild. They seemed to recover just fine, but I imagine that's a scary situation.
Yeah,
cases.
It was horrible. To tell you the truth, we're actually having a command staff meeting right here next door, and while we expected that potentially we'd get 1 or 2 positive screenings, the initial phone call I received was 5. 5 out of 5 positive, and then the next phone call I got about an hour later was the next 3 out of 3. So with 8 positives right out of the chute, pretty daunting for us. We did end up testing an additional 19 the following day, and I can tell you that the feeling here at headquarters was that we're going to have another large number of positives coming in, and thank goodness there was only 2 positives. The rest were negative, and we've done very, very well with social distancing and utilizing good hygiene. And like I said, 21 days since we've had a positive, which is fantastic for us.
What have you guys been able to figure out where that outbreak came from? Was there some kind of interaction with the public? Was it localized to a specific fire station? I know Fire Station 11 was a particular site. Right. Have you figured out how so many firefighters became infected so quickly and where that infection came from?
Yeah, we can't assume, and we can kind of guess at where it came from. And did they have contact with patients that were positive? Yes. Did it come from them? I have no idea. Every time I pick up a newspaper or look on a news feed, there's something different coming out that says now you can be asymptomatic, walking around as a carrier, infecting people and not even know it. So we're not sure 100% how and when that occurred.
How I would imagine those firefighters and a lot of emergency personnel out there right now have families at home, and they're out, interacting with the public a lot. Right. What has that been like in terms of? I'm sure people want to protect their families.
Yeah, it's scary in many respects, but like I said, we prepare for those situations that come up on us. And we've been doing a lot of communication with the other agencies throughout the region. We're utilizing best practices from everyone. Everybody is sharing everything because we all want to keep each other safe. And I could tell you that here at the station, they're utilizing good hygiene. We've got hand washing stations at all the stations on the exterior so that before you go in the station, you're getting cleaned up. The fuel pumps throughout the city that we utilize have hand washing stations there as well. The firefighters are utilizing actual clean corridors where they're taking their boots off, and you're getting chastised if you're a new guy in the station or gal coming in the station and you didn't realize I'm not supposed to walk there with my dirty boots on, and out you go. So there's a lot of different things being utilized. And then when people go home, I know for the most part, I do this when I go home, straight into the garage. I have clean clothes in the garage that my wife has been kind enough to place there for me. Throw those on, straight up the stairs and into the shower. So it's a new world that we're living in. And I'm just very proud of everybody. They're doing their absolute best, not only the firefighters, but also the public. And you could tell by the flattening of the curve, and it's been great for the city.
And we did get a question just now about that, just about how firefighters are kind of coping with the threat to themselves and to their families. And I just want to remind people who are watching, we're chatting with the Long Beach Fire Department chief today. So please send your questions if you have any questions you want to ask about the emergency response. But that's a scary thing.
It is. And just about everybody on this planet knows somebody that has a vulnerability to it, right? Either elderly parents or somebody that has some type of illness where they can be affected. And so we have some personnel that have opted, I think, to be in a motorhome, like next to the house for a bit. When that first batch of 8 personnel came in and they were sick, I actually have person in my family in the same respect. So I stayed out of the house for a couple of weeks just to make sure, and then started practicing those disciplines that I talked to you about, going in the garage, getting cleaned up and before you go in the house. But so far, so good. It looks like the last 21 days, nobody's been tested positive.
One of the things we've had to do some reporting on this week is this movement. I don't even know if I want to call it a movement, but these events across the country that there have been protests here and there, and there have been some small online rumblings about protesting some of the stay-at-home measures here in Long Beach. And being someone who is worried about being exposed to this, working with people who are taking daily extreme precautions to make sure their family's not exposed to this, what's your reaction to that? Because I'm sure you see the tension. I'm sure the fire department is going to run up against budgeting issues. But what would you say to people who are saying we're going overboard on this, or being too extreme?
Well, I would say look back to 1918 and the Spanish flu and what that did to the planet, and which was decimating. And when the doors opened up too soon and the pandemic started up all over again. And so we're trying to take a measured approach as a city, that we get back. Everybody realizes we have to get back to work. And that's part of the recovery phase. And that's what we're in right now. And so I do see us starting to open things up. But as far as stopping those procedures that we know have helped us out in California, I personally don't think that is a good way to go at this point.
I know obviously the health department is kind of the lead agency on this, but do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see kind of, have we shifted a little bit in the response? It's
tough to know. Again, you asked what was different about this, and it's the unknown, right? So right now, it's eerily quiet, just kind of gone quiet around here. So we're starting to get our feet back underneath us and look at it. You brought up economy and budget. Let's look at that. What's it going to look like? How do we get the city back open? We have a recovery team that's being stood up right now to look at how do we get the city open safely, and also without being debilitating to us as an economy.
You said eerily quiet, and that I hear you there. It feels that way everywhere you go. But I'm wondering what that has actually meant for your guys' workload. Are calls up? Are calls down? I think LA County Fire recently came out and said they're actually having more fires because people are home, and there's more chance for that happening. But how has your call volume been? What kind of stuff are you responding to more or less than you normally would be?
Yeah, so for us, the call volume overall has been about 10% down. Transports are, I believe, about 30% down. So people are still asking for help and asking for evaluation. But when the offer is made, do you want to go to the hospital? Nobody wants to go to the hospital because that's where there are other sick people, and they just prefer to stay at home. So it's gone very quiet there. In regards to fires, I don't know that we've had any real uptick here in Long Beach, but I can tell you that some of the other area partners that I was on the phone with this morning have made statements like it's the most fires they've had in quite some time, and in their memory that they can think of.
Another one I've heard a few places talk about is auto accidents. I think Mayor Garcetti up in LA recently said that they've had a lot fewer traumatic crashes, but the ones they've had have just been horrific because people are out there speeding. And I wonder if you've seen anything similar.
I do. So I live about 45 miles from here. So a lot of freeway driving. And I can tell you that the speeds at which people are passing me are unbelievable. Very, very light traffic, which is great for getting into work. But there's some people out there that are taking advantage of it. And it's dangerous, to say the least.
So you have to travel quite a distance to get to work.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've lived there pretty much my entire career, so yeah, I'm used to it.
And are you working? I'm sure you guys are all on schedules. Are you working Monday through Friday, or how do you guys work that out?
Yeah, so our command staff in normal operations work 4/10, but as soon as this occurred, everybody of their own volition just jumped in and went, "Okay, we're going to work 5 days a week, and we're going to overlap so that someone from a specific bureau is always here, Saturday, Sunday, whenever. So we were covered 24/7 for the entire period. And just now are we starting to pull back and say, okay, you know what? Get a weekend and recharge your batteries, and then we'll come back at it on Monday. But yeah, everybody's been going full tilt.
That's something we've had to worry about here too, is just the burnout, because it's hard. Even when you go home, it's hard for things to stop, because this is everybody's entire life now. It's like you can go home and stop thinking about the pandemic. And I wondered what you've heard about. You talked a little bit about the management team there, but what about from the front lines too? Are frontline firefighters worried about getting burned out? Are they anxious about this? What kind of concerns are they coming to you with, and how are you guys helping?
They're actually they're in great spirits, to tell you the truth. In regards to so say that the incident that happened coming out of Station 11 with 8 firefighters that showed up positive. I think the fact that command staff immediately jumped into action. We got the firefighters that were there that day out of the station into an alternative site. Brought a team in to disinfect the station, to disinfect all the apparatus, that the people on the floor know that we are looking out for their best interest, trying to keep them as safe as possible. So the spirits have been very, very good. And as far as staffing and being able to support the effort, it seems similar to like a wildfire season, where you're lean and it's tough to get everything filled, but we're making do, and we're doing it in a good way.
Have there been any? I know this has been a problem in other jurisdictions. I don't know what the situation is locally, but has there been any concern about access to PPE? Do you guys have the equipment you need, and has it been a struggle to get that?
Yeah, at times it got pretty lean at the very beginning when everyone was going for the same types of equipment. We got very fortunate. Like I said, we were very forward leaning. And so that incident management team has a logistics portion of it that they jumped right into it. And in fact, they've set up a local distribution site here at headquarters that is stacked with PPE and other things, cleaning supplies, everything that we need to support the effort. They have LA County has another regional distribution site down at the convention center, which is similar to what we have here, but no, we stayed ahead of it, and we're in good shape right now.
How'd that go? So the city was out there procuring it on its own from vendors, or was that coming in from state aid or donations, or do you know how that worked?
In both directions, yeah. So the logistics there at the beginning, they're reaching out to anybody and everybody, trying to find those PPE.
And now it sounds like you're in a position that you're able to even distribute some of them.
Potentially, yes. And that's not only PPE for first responders, for PD and fire and health, PPE for other essential workers that are still out there from public works and other departments that need, their own protection.
What has been, is there any incidents or anecdotes has there been anything that's been heartening about this to you, that's been positive, that you've learned maybe from this over the past 6 weeks?
Yeah. So I've always kind of felt it, but never really seen it in this magnitude. But the resilience and the responsiveness, not only of our department, but of the entire city team. And really, my hat is off to the civilians that have been in here with us shoulder to shoulder, because we're sworn to protect the city, the state, the nation. Everybody else that's coming in is doing it of their own volition. And we were calling on people by name, saying, you have a skill set that we need in the finance division, or you have a skill set we need in planning. And no one has balked. They've been very, very good about coming in, and it's been fantastic to see that happen and to see that team put together. And I think it's been fantastic for the city.
We do have a question. It's a very nice question.
Yeah.
Someone wants to know how the community can support first responders.
They can support us by continuing to stay home. The stay-at-home orders, keep those in place. continue with their social distancing, continue with their good hygiene, which helps to flatten the curve, and that protects everybody. It protects them. It protects us, all of the healthcare workers at the hospitals, and that's probably the biggest way they can support us.
And I just got a note from Stephanie, who's doing our kind of gathering our questions, and she said all the comments have just, all the people that are responding as they're watching are just expressing gratitude and appreciation.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
So I just thought I'd tell you that.
Yeah, thanks.
Do we want to ask about the budget? Shift pivoting.
That is actually something we've thought about a lot more as a newsroom, is just the long-term fallout of this. I mean, we're still in the middle of the health crisis, but also as the city and the city of LA and the state, everybody has been talking about just how much of a hit the economy is taking from this, and how much of a hit everybody's budget is going to take from this. And I'm wondering, with you as the department, having been building back for so many years from the recession and ramping up hiring, adding back engines, is that all suddenly going to go away now? Like, it seems like you've been working a long time to build back your capacity and your ability. What happens now?
Yeah, I wish I could foresee the future and to see how and when this eventually comes to an end. Hopefully it's a soft landing for us. That being said, we're in a position right now, obviously, where the economy's been hit pretty hard. We're already looking, city management has asked us to take a look, all of us, all the departments, take a look within your departments and see where maybe we can defer some of the things that we have in place for now on this budget year. Maybe defer some of the things in the coming budgets. And so we are actively looking at that. All of our bureaus are looking at that. We realize there's a finite amount of money that's available here in the city, and we're going to do our best to optionalize it.
Is there anything that you've seen that's on the table yet? Are there any things that are anything specific yet that you've come up with that you're thinking, this may be a problem, this may be on the chopping block? I don't want to get out ahead of your decisions, but what kind of areas are you looking at that may suffer cutbacks?
Yeah, well, specifically, that it's a tough answer to question to answer, in that I would need actual dollar amounts, and we have things that are broken up into smaller amounts, and then obviously into much greater amounts. You brought up the recession, in 2008. I was here for that and saw how debilitating it was to our department to lose apparatus and to lose personnel, and how busy that made all of us on a daily basis. And it took 10 years to make it almost all the way back. And so this pandemic is doubly horrible in that not only is it affecting the economy, but that can also affect those same people that are going to be going out and taking care of the citizens here within the city. So rest assured, we are looking at that. Anything specific? I don't have anything specific yet that we're actually looking at, but at this point in time, we do have 2 recruit classes that we're looking at, one in August and one in February. And that's because of retirements and everything else that are coming up. And Engine 17, which we added here recently, takes 12 more people on our roster. So there's a lot of different things at play.
You mentioned the retirements. So you've had a number of retirements, and you've also had an opportunity to hire some new recruits. Is there kind of I think you mentioned this, you did an interview with the Gazettes when you were first hired. And I don't want to misquote you, but I think you mentioned this sort of gap in experience. Has that been a factor at all?
No, as far as a factor in how it's affecting what we're doing out in the streets?
Yeah.
No, not at all. I can tell you the training center that we have and the cadre out there, absolutely fantastic. And also the fact that we choose the absolute best candidates coming in the door. If you could see the resumes and the performance of the people that we just finished looking at a couple months ago, and how difficult a decision it is to pare that down, it's very hard. But no, I don't see a gap in performance whatsoever. You've got a lot of experience going out the door, but you've got a lot of youth and enthusiasm, and some people that are coming in with an entirely different skill set. Even looking at this Zoom is first time I've ever tried it. So yeah, it's a new one for me. But while you're talking about longevity, if I may, I'm going to give a shout out. So today is actually my 34th anniversary on the job.
Wow.
There's 3 of us left. And one of them, Jay Schaefer, is a captain. He's over at the EOC right now working. Fernando Silva is a member of our urban search and rescue team. And so just wanted to give them a shout out and say happy anniversary. And we'll see which one of us is the last man standing. I don't think it's going to be me.
Congratulations, 34
Thanks.
years. So we're at 1:30. These half hours always go by very fast. Is there any closing thoughts or anything? What's the one thing you would want people to know? I guess just in closing.
I just want everyone to know how much the fire department in particular feels the support of the community. Everybody has been so fantastic between supplying meals and sending cards and coming by and honking and doing all this stuff. It's been great because we know everybody is under a lot of duress, and to shake that off and come and lift us up is a heavy lift. And so the citizens here, the residents and visitors have always been terrific for the fire department. I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. I know you are incredibly busy, so I appreciate your time, and maybe we'll have you back after we're kind of through this part of it, and we can talk more. And thank you for those who are watching. We had the fire chief today. We've got the police chief on tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we'll have Jill Baker, who was just appointed she'll be taking over as superintendent of Long Beach schools in July when Chris Steinhauser retires. So we've got some good guests lined up this week. Send your questions. You can email them to me at melissa@longbeachpost.com, or you can just type them into the comment thread as we're going. So thank you again. And thank you, Jeremiah, for stepping away from breaking news for a second.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief, for taking the time.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.